Hi everyone. We've got some people coming into the room right now. So I'm going to kick off with some introductions. Thank you so much and welcome to the Ambition Surgery for Spring Accelerator number 4, all around the topic of emerging contaminants. Really excited to be having this Ambition Surgery today. Thank you so much for coming along. It's great to see so many familiar faces in the audience today. My name is Natalie Lamb. I'm the Innovation Delivery Manager at Spring, which means I run our innovation projects in the UK and Ireland. And I'm so excited to see you all in the room today. So today's session, first up, I'm going to be introducing the amazing Thomas Walker, who is the Senior Innovation Manager at Spring, and he's going to properly and formally and do a much better job of me at kicking off today's event. So Thomas leads the innovation program at Spring, overseeing the accelerator and the development of Spring's innovation offering. So welcome to the stage, you can always say, Thomas.
Thank you, Natalie. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much, as Natalie's saying, for joining our Spring Accelerator for Ambition Surgery. Welcome. So today is, as Natalie was just saying, sort of the official launch of our next accelerator, Spring Accelerator 4. And we are really excited to be launching a new challenge inside Water Innovation Strategy Theme 2, providing clean water for all. It's an important topic, emerging contaminants specifically are getting increasing amounts of attention. And we at Spring are really looking forward to helping find and progress innovations that can help sort of move the needle in this area. For those who don't know me or maybe missed the little tiny introduction that Natalie just gave, my name is Thomas. I'm the Senior Innovation Manager at Spring. So yeah, I look after the innovation side of our business. My job today, however, is to provide a little introduction to Spring, our accelerator, the 2 sessions that we're running today, giving a little bit more context behind our challenge area and process before handing back over to Natalie and all the amazing speakers that we have lined up for us today. And I'll be doing the same for an afternoon and also sort of facilitating a great panel that we'll have to close the session, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. Before going any further and kind of kicking off the session properly, just want to give a special shout out to RSE, Rothshire Engineering, for sponsoring Spring Accelerator 4. We will hear more from Mark from the RSE team in a moment, but yeah, just want to say that we're really grateful for them in helping us deliver this program. So kicking off with a little intro to Spring. So Spring is an innovation accelerator that enables collaboration within and beyond the water sector to drive transformational innovation. So just to give a little bit more context and kind of explain what that means, around 2020, the water sector came together to form an innovation strategy. This is a document to help shape and direct innovation efforts in the sector. It's called the Water Innovation Strategy 2050. And among other things, it outlines 7 key themes and short, medium, and long-term ambitions inside each of those themes. Critically, part of this document also articulated the need for a center of excellence to help deliver this strategy. Launched in December 2021, officially, Spring is this center of excellence. So we are supported by all 18 UK and Ireland water companies, as well as a great group of suppliers, academics, and sort of other professional bodies. We sort of sit in the middle of everybody and try and grease the wheels of cross-sector innovation, because we know that great stuff happens all around the country, but it's estimated that I think that the same innovation project happens 4 times nationally, which isn't a great use of time or money for anyone involved. So where possible, practical, and feasible, Spring exists to try and bring that number down to as close to 1 as we possibly can. And one of the ways that we do this is the Spring Accelerator. The accelerator itself calls out for specific implementable innovation for water companies to trial, progress, and adopt as a collaborative group. So our goal here is to get multiple water companies involved in projects that come out of the accelerator, so they can split costs, share learnings, and as I said a moment ago, so that across the sector, the project in question happens fewer times. So looking at the process, we start with the Ambition Surgery, which is our event today, right? This is a sector-wide sort of conference-like event for the industry to come together, articulate the problem space, and begin to define the specific challenge the accelerator will focus on. Here, we're bringing together relevant experts to share insight, go through learnings, and again, begin to define what successful resolution could look like and reduce duplication of the stuff that has already happened in the sector. Our second phase is the innovation marketplace. This is the platform we use to distribute our challenge to our partners in the UK and abroad, and also the way that innovators submit their solutions. For innovators, is an incredibly efficient way of not only getting your solution in front of the right eyeballs, but being guaranteed detailed feedback on its potential. So you submit one application and the right person from participating water companies will see and evaluate it. And the water companies also benefit from this efficiency, right? So suppliers are screened, engagement is concentrated, they get access to the best opportunities at a fraction of the resource, a fraction of the time cost. Our third touch point, innovation exchange. So although there is a pitching element to it, I think we prefer to frame this as a co-creation moment. We bring together innovators who've been selected from the previous phase and delegated committees from water companies to really deep dive on a solution. I mean, I think that the magic of this touch point is that both the water company and the innovator know that it's not a sales moment, where a good pitch and charm is going to get you over the line. But it's a deep dive in which solutions are dissected, business cases are built, analyzed, assumptions are challenged, and productive cross-sector partnerships are formed. Final stage is mobilization, which is a facilitation service to mobilize projects with multiple UK and Ireland water companies. I'll talk about it more on the next slide, but the form of mobilization can vary between different challenges and different innovators. But ultimately, we are here to support both sides, be that with formal agreements, trial scoping, site identification, getting projects kicked off. The process, as I've just described it, makes sure that upstream, so in our moments like today, we are identifying a genuine sector-wide need, so we're tackling the right problem, and that the quality of interaction between water companies and innovators throughout the process is such that we find the right solution. So we're identifying the right problem in spaces like this, and then working to identify the right solutions throughout the rest of our process. Looking backward to our previous programs for just a moment, Spring Accelerator 1 sat inside our net zero theme and looked at process emissions. 2 inside resilient infrastructure and was looking at asset monitoring in changing environments. 3 was inside protecting and enhancing natural systems, looking at data integration inside catchment management. We have around 19 innovations in our portfolio, have had all 18 UK and Ireland water companies engage in the process, and have supported or are in the process of supporting all of our portfolio companies in either securing multi-partner trials or creating meaningful relationships with individual water companies to help progress their solutions. Just to pull out 1 or 2 here, Siemens Xylem from SA1 is being mobilized as part of Severn Trent's Net Zero Hub. Blue Methane was formerly mentored by a water company and made a significant pivot to their business as a result. From SA2, Incortec and Smartia are progressing towards trials. Creed 7 and Tribosonics both went through mentoring. And we're still closing up the final things with Spring Accelerator 3, but it looks like it will also be a blend of trials, mentoring, and some workshops across the cohort. The point I'm trying to make by pulling these things out is to show that there isn't one successful outcome from the Spring Accelerator. Our goal is to move solutions from where they are today when they apply to a place that they are more market ready. And the specifics of that can vary from challenge to challenge or solution to solution, but ultimately every path is designed with and for both the innovator and the water company. So zooming back in on our session today, as I mentioned a moment ago, the ambition surgery is our problem definition and challenge setting mechanism. This means we take our challenge area, we explore it, and begin to define what a specific challenge for this accelerator program will be. This exploration is done across 2 sessions, one this morning and one in the afternoon today. In the morning, we want to form a common understanding, common baseline of what emerging contaminants are, what this challenge area is. So we're going to look at it from a technical perspective, a business one, and a regulatory one. Again, we're really trying to make sure that we're speaking the same language and create this common understanding, this baseline ahead of this afternoon session. In the afternoon, we'll start by learning from things we've already tried in the space. And the first section here, we've actually got some great lessons from international colleagues that can begin to outline some guardrails and signal maybe what the challenge shouldn't focus on, because we don't want to do things that have already been done, right? The problems that have been solved. And then to close the day, we have a great panel to begin to outline the playing field, asking the types of things we need to do to understand, to measure, to take meaningful action. Like, where should we be focusing our challenge to create genuine value for the sector? I should quickly mention that this afternoon session is a separate event. So if you haven't signed up for the afternoon session, please make sure you do. I think one of the Spring team will put a link to the registration in the chat just now. Post these two sessions after the day, we take all the data, consolidate it, and begin to draft our call for innovation. It's this call for innovation that we publish as the official challenge. What this means is at the end of the session today, we aren't expecting a perfect challenge statement. The purpose of the session today is to have interesting, productive conversations about the area that we're operating in, getting insight from our expert speakers, creating space for everyone to participate and share their knowledge, and for us to get a bit excited about the potential for innovation in the space and where the value is to be created. So today, in fact, is a learning day. So what are we going to be learning about? What is our challenge area? We're going to be looking at emerging contaminants. So to us, that means addressing the knowledge gaps, treatment limitations, and regulatory challenges of often unregulated chemicals and other substances detected in water and the environment that pose a potential risk to human and/or ecosystem health. And look, we've gone through a pretty extensive process to get to this challenge area. We started with water company innovation priorities to identify areas where there is both desire and resource to solve. We have spoken with subject matter experts from water companies, supply chain, academia. We've gone through rounds of voting and refinement, but really this is just the first step, the first half of our challenge setting process, with the second half starting today. So the presentations and conversations we will have will help us refine this, admittedly broad challenge area into something specific, actionable, and again, ultimately feed into the writing for our call for innovation. So what does the agenda look like today? So I've mentioned the sort of three main sections. So I'm not going to go into that in too much detail. I would like to mention before going further, however, the incredible variety of speakers that we have here today. So Spring is here for the whole sector. And as such, we are bringing in water companies, academics, regulators, suppliers to share their insight, their experience, and play an active role in the definition of our challenge. So after this little introduction from me, we will go into the context setting section with emerging contaminants and overview. We're going to hear from Uckwire, Wessex Water, and the Welsh Government, and they'll be giving us a technical perspective, a water company one and a regulatory one. Then we'll have the opportunity for some audience Q&A before getting a little inspiration from RSE, who are, as I mentioned at the beginning, kind enough to sponsor the Spring Accelerator 4 program. In the afternoon, we will, as I said, gain an international perspective, starting with Massachusetts Waterworks Association, learning about a case study from Xylem from a project they run in Germany, and listening to a PhD researcher from the University of Antwerp. And then we'll close with our great panel that will help us define some boundaries and goals for our challenge. I think it's going to be a good day, and I'm really happy to have so many faces in the room to help us along this journey. And yeah, just for anyone who might still have a little bit of a summer hangover, which in early September we're forgiven for, we are in the morning session. Kira has posted the link in the chat. Please sign up for the afternoon one if you haven't already and can attend. It isn't all about the speakers. We have a great panel, great list of speakers for us today, but it's not all about them. We are trying to also create the space for the audience to participate. And in this morning session, that means Q&A. There will be another way of contributing in the afternoon, but for now, it's all about asking great questions to our speakers. So please post your questions in the chat as they come up. The Spring team will collect them and feed them to the speakers. So please don't feel you need to wait until the Q&A section to post your questions. We will manage all of that and make sure that we ask as many of them as we can to our speakers today. With that, I'm going to pass back to Natalie, who is going to introduce the next section and the first of our amazing speakers. Just want to say thanks again to everyone who's joining and to our amazing speakers. And yeah, I'll pop back up a couple of different times today to help us have some of these conversations. But nice to see so many faces here. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for that great introduction to Spring, the Spring Accelerator program, and everything beyond that. I'm really excited to be working with you all in the room today to come up with that call for innovation, those sort of problem statements, those research questions that could go into an actual call for innovation. And hopefully, maybe that blank box on Thomas's slide for Spring Accelerator 4, maybe some of the people who are here in the audience today will be applying and could have their logos in that box for future. Fingers crossed, that would be super exciting. So yes, as Thomas said, welcome to the overview session. So we've got 3 great speakers for you today who are going to be delivering a 10-minute presentation, followed by 1 collective Q&A for 10 minutes following the 3. So first up, I would please like to introduce to the stage Jenny Hughes from UCWIR, UK Water Industry Research. So Jenny started her career at Thames Water, and she's actually delivered the Thames Water Chemical Investigation Programme for over 10 years in a past life before joining UCWIR as Strategic Programme Manager. At UCWIR, she develops, manages and delivers UCWIR's research for sustainable wastewater management and sustainability and resilient sewage and drainage. That's a lot of words. You seem to do an awful lot, Jenny. She's also overseeing the Substances of Emerging Concern Advisory Group and manages the National Chemical Investigations Programme Stage 4. Not only that, but she is also really, really amazing. So give it up for Jenny. She's the kindest person, and we all need to give her a massive virtual round of applause. Welcome to the stage, Jenny.
Thank you, Natalie. That's a very glowing introduction. So I'm going to do a bit of scene setting for you this morning. So I'm just going to talk to you sort of basically what are emerging contaminants. I think we all know what they are to some extent, but do we really know? So let me just get this going. Okay, fantastic. So what are emerging contaminants? We hear this word bandied around an awful lot, but it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And in trying to just find a definition, it's really difficult. There is just not one standardized terminologies or reference that we can pull from for this. But generally, emerging contaminants is broad term. It's used when a substance isn't yet regulated, but it might be of a human health or environmental concern. And basically, we just don't know the risks of these substances. They can be newly identified, synthetic or naturally occurring chemicals, biological agents, and they're detected in the environment. That's how we find them. And as I say, they're potentially hazardous or recently determined to be hazardous to humans and ecosystems. But we should also include substances that have been identified previously in the environment, but we just don't know or have only just started to look at their presence and their significance in that context. Basically, if we look for things, we'll often find them, but it's only after a certain time that we may consider, well, what is this doing to us, to the environment? One of the things that we've, in the last sort of 10, 15 years, started to think about is that these can become complex mixtures. We can't just think about these contaminants in isolation. But the problem is we often don't know if these pose more or less risk to humans and the environment. This is sort of that cocktail effect that's often described as well. The problem with emerging contaminants, or one of the problems, is that they can also transform in the environment. So not only if we started off with something that's potentially dangerous to the environment and to humans, but they can also perhaps even get worse or less worse. They can be persistent. They can they can be bioaccumulative and they can be toxic. But this is all dependent on the environment that they're in, the concentrations that they're found in, and the interactions with those environments as well. Key thing to note is they can enter the environment through a number of pathways. It's not just a water industry issue. It's a bigger problem than that. So they can enter through industrial discharges, through wastewater discharges. That's a common one that we might all think about. Agricultural runoff, what's being spread onto land, road runoff. We're starting to see much more interest in this area now, sort of through Stormwater Shepherds and other organisations highlighting that drainage from roads just isn't regulated in any way. Combustion, we're burning things. What's that doing? Application to land through our own biosolids from the wastewater side of our businesses. And then we're going to find them in different aspects of the environment as well. We're going to find them in soils, we'll find them in air, we'll find them in water, or a combination of these. And that's where it's really important. What's going into the environment from all of these places is coming back out in our drinking water, most likely. And we've got to protect the human health, but also the environmental health when we're considering these issues. The thing with emerging contaminants, they're often ubiquitous. We'll find them everywhere. It's not just a localized issue. It's not within 100 meters downstream of a sewage works. We find them upstream of sewage works in pristine environments. We find them things in the Antarctic, in the ice caps. Those weren't put there by anyone but humans, unfortunately. So this is a big problem. It's a global problem, but we can all play a little small part to perhaps alleviate some of those risks to our own human health and to the environment as well. What are the emerging contaminants? And again, this is one where there isn't really a defined list. It's so big, it changes. But at the moment, these are some of the key ones that I was able to sort of identify and are sort of more easily recognizable. So things like pharmaceuticals, anything that we put into our bodies for, improving our health, protecting our health, antibiotics, antidepressants, antifungals, any medication that we take, contraceptive, anything like that. It doesn't all stay in your body. It clearly passes out and that has to go somewhere. But once it's done its job in your body, then what's it doing to the environment? In a lot of cases, we just don't know. Personal care products. This is a very popular one now. The perfluoro and polyfluoroalkyl substances, aka PFAS, much easier to say. This one has hit the headlines like nothing else. I'm sure a lot of you will have seen things like Dark Waters, and if you haven't, I recommend watching it. This has become a very hot topic in recent years, and I think later we're going to hear from Jennifer from the US, who's going to talk about their approach to sort of managing the risk of PFAS. Pesticides and insecticides, it's not just the agricultural use of these, it can be the domestic use. What are you putting on to kill your slugs? What are you putting on to get rid of those green fly? Micro and nanoplastics. Again, this one has hit the headlines more so in, the last 5 years than most things related to the water industry, until CSOs perhaps. But we just don't understand the risks around these. We are often hearing headlines, they've been found in placenta, they've been found to be in people's hearts. We think they're now getting into humans, but the problem is, what are they doing there? We just don't know. Antibiotic resistance genes. There's been some fantastic work started on antimicrobial resistance, understanding, what the water industry's role in that is. We know that it's one of the biggest killers. It's going to overtake cancers and various other, well-known illnesses over time as we start to develop more and more drugs, but our bodies become more and more resistant to those. It's an emerging problem that, again, we don't understand fully, and we will have to investigate and hopefully find solutions for. Some of the others, persistent organic pollutants, some of the polybrominated diphenyl ethers, things that were used in flame retardants, both historically and present. And one thing that we often miss out is the sort of veterinary medicines. We're thinking of things that humans use for humans' betterment, what makes our lives easier, quicker, what makes us healthier or protects our homes. But actually veterinary medicines, including some of the antimicrobials that are used and antifungals that are in our pets, in our agricultural use as well. Industrial additives, we don't always know what gets added into the products that we buy. And yeah, that could be a very big problem for us. But not only do these things cause a potential issue by themselves, it's the metabolites and what these break down into. As I said previously, we just don't necessarily understand that. We don't know if that's better, worse, different, more risk, less risk, different environmental contexts around those. And over time, that list has changed. Some of the things that we see on this list, we just didn't even think about 5, 10, 15, 25 years ago. And this can obviously be impacted by evidence, scientific evidence of these products existing or causing an impact, but it can also be driven in part by public interest. And that's something that we should always be cautious of, that we're not just necessarily being driven by the public agenda, but we have evidence base to make decisions from. And as I say, this has caused, peaks and troughs of interest over the years. 15 years ago, we were all in a panic about endocrine disruptors. What on earth is happening to our fish? Intersex fish, what's going on? Then we moved perhaps into pesticides, and now we've gone through nanomaterials and microplastics and PFAS now. The problem with an emerging contaminant is, as it emerges, we become aware of it. We become more interested in the potential risk. We want to know more, and until it's regulated, we are seeing an increase in sort of interest until we can define there is or is not a problem. The properties of emerging contaminants. There is no one list. Again, this is a theme I'm picking up in my own speak. So we don't have a clear definition. We don't have a clear list, but there are a variety of different things that we can say about them. They could be bioaccumulative. Their exposure limits are of interest. And the impacts, we just don't know. What's the regulation behind it? A lot of these fit under the category of unknown. And Natalie's told me I've got 2 minutes. I'm going to quickly skip through the next 2 slides and then I'm done. So I'm going to dip into regulation ever so slightly here. In drinking water, where we've seen emerged contaminants, we've started to take a precautionary approach through regulation. We've now got some limits for pesticides. There are some limits for PFAS, but for pharmaceuticals, a risk-based approach has sort of suggested that we don't need to at the moment because we don't think there's enough exposure limit that could be of harm to human health. Wastewater, bit of a different picture. There isn't really much regulation in this area at the moment, but we are starting to see some coming through. So in AMP8, the water companies have a challenge to deliver against some permits for non-alphenol, cypermethrin, and PFOS. Although that one's a monitoring condition, we're not expecting to see any sort of big technology solutions for that one yet. But we don't know the direction of travel for regulation. If the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, the recast of that recently was published at the EU level, if that is implemented in the UK and the developed nations, we might start to see that we need to do something more. But this is probably going to be more on chemicals rather than the microplastics or the antimicrobial resistance sort of area. And as I say here, the direction of regulation has a significant potential to determine the scale of the challenge. So we're often driven by regulation, and Natalie's just told me that's time, so I will stop talking now. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jenny. I'm going to have this really horrible reputation for being a right stickler to the times, but no, thank you so much for that overview. Can I get Megan to share your slides, please? Just while Megan is sharing slides, yes, thank you again very much, Jenny. I think I'm going to have to do some brushing up on my ability to say some of these chemicals because, oh my gosh, I don't know how you manage to say them within the confines of the presentation. I'm actually a microbiologist by background, so I'm new to the world of chemistry. So thank you very much. That was a really handy overview. And we will be sharing slides as well as the recording of this session after the session for anyone else who wants to learn some of those words as well. So thank you very much for the technical overview to the topic. Next up, we've got Megan Robertson, who's going to be giving us sort of that business, that water utility context to these emerging contaminants. So Megan manages that chemical investigation program for Wessex Water. I will let her describe more about what CIP is all about, but I just wanted to say congratulations, Megan, for being for your chartership that you completed this year. Many congratulations. I have had it on my CV for about 5 years that I've been working towards my chartership, so very well done for getting that sorted and passing that. Very well done. I'll hand over to you, Megan, and stop talking, but I'm super looking forward to hearing you present today.
Great, thank you, Natalie, and thanks, Jenny, for that great introduction as well. So, yeah, as Natalie said, I'm Megan Robertson. I'm a senior environmental scientist at Wessex Water, and I'm going to talk about the emerging contaminant issues from a water industry perspective. There we go. So just as a quick intro to Wessex Water, we are a water and sewage company. We provide water and sewage services to about approximately 3 million people across the southwest. And as Jenny highlighted, we're a very highly regulated business and industry. So the Drinking Water Inspectorate, who regulate drinking water, have the Environment Agency, who are environmental regulators, and also Ofwat, who are our economic regulator. So this is just a picture of our patch. We have various sort of urban pockets as well as quite a large rural catchment. So why are we interested in emerging contaminants? I realise that Jenny has covered quite a few of these sort of intro slides on my PowerPoint, so hopefully I won't dwell too much on this. But yeah, there's a lot of research around emerging contaminants in the environment and the impacts of those on invertebrates and fish, and that's sort of being started to be picked up in the media quite a lot now. And that research is also starting to discover impacts of emerging contaminants on human health. So there's one article there in the bottom left, which says microscopic plastics could raise the risk of stroke and heart attack. So yeah, there's lots of research around the impacts of emerging contaminants in all their forms and types. And as water recycling centres or sewage treatment works, generally the water industry is one of those main pathways of emerging contaminants to the environment. Is very important for us as an industry and as specific water companies to sort of monitor those, monitor our discharges and see what the performance is of them regarding emerging contaminants and how we can sort of improve that going forward. So again, Jenny has sort of covered this, but the sources and pathways of emerging contaminants. So a lot of the main sources to sewer, so within that water recycling centre network or wastewater network, a lot of the sources are actually from like domestic activities, so from within the home. So pharmaceuticals, personal care products, cleaning, chemicals, laundry. So when you wash your non-stick Teflon frying pans and you re-waterproof your like wet weather gear, stuff like that, all of those chemicals then discharge into the wastewater network and reach our water recycling centres. And traditionally, they are not designed to remove these sort of new and emerging chemicals. They're mainly designed for more sanitary removal. So that's one of the main pathways that they can enter the environment. Also, going back a step, other sort of sources to sewer include industrial discharges, so either the use or production of chemicals within the sewerage catchment, landfill leachate, contaminated land. Again, these are quite hot topics at the moment. And then generally, sort of more looking towards drinking water and sort of wider catchment inputs of emerging substances. So again, Jenny sort of covered these as well. So agricultural runoff, pesticides and other plant protection products that are used within that, and also road runoff. So a large source of heavy metals, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, microplastics, and tire wear products. So there's lots of. That's not an exhaustive list. You can sort of see on this flow diagram from a paper that I put in that there's lots of different sources and that sort of recurring loops of inputs and outputs of emerging substances in the environment. So we recognise that there's an issue and the water industry needs to sort of respond to that, and we've done that through the Chemical Investigations Programme. So since 2010, in response to new legislation on surface water quality, we have looked to sort of monitor the impact of emerging substances and the occurrence through the Chemical Investigations Programme. So the sort of high level aim is to improve understanding of the occurrence, behaviour and management of trace contaminants in the wastewater treatment process and in effluents. So I'm not going to dwell too much on this. I've got quite a few other slides, but just briefly, so since 2010 we've sort of been looking at CIP, so Chemical Investigations Programme, in various phases. So firstly looking at sort of chemicals, emerging chemicals within final effluent. And that sort of evolved into looking at the environmental impact, so looking at upstream river and downstream river of various chemicals, and also looking at technology trials. So how effective are current treatment processes that are installed on water recycling centres? How effective are they in removing chemicals from the wastewater? And that sort of evolved again into CIP3, so CIP phase 3. Sort of looking at more specific investigations and environmental compartments, so looking at catchment investigations, both river and sewer catchment, looking for sources of chemicals, looking at long-term trends, looking at mechanisms of removal. So from the input of a works, where do those chemicals go? Do they sort of pass through unchanged and released in the final effluent, or do they partition to sludge and then they sort of go into biosolids and re-enter the environment? Or do they break down? What happens to them? So that's quite a key output from CIP phase 3. And then currently we're looking to scope, well, we are scoping SIP phase 4, which will be an AMP8 delivery program, so from April 25. And again, that sort of evolved more to become a bit more complex. So we're looking at things like integrated constructed wetlands, groundwater, a larger focus on biosolids and sludge, and various local investigations. So sort of understanding more chemicals and different environments as well. Oh, actually, one more point. So based on the SIP monitoring, as Jenny mentioned, we're starting to get permitted for these for a small selection of these chemicals on wastewater sites, and also drinking water, not related to SIP. SIP is a wastewater program, but the DWI have issued various guidance letters under the regulation for wholesomeness, and those have placed tiered PFAS limits on drinking water. And so from this whole thing, sort of from all the monitoring and the sort of impending regulation, there are various challenges that I'm just going to quickly talk about. So they're sort of split into 3 themes. So the first one's on detecting or monitoring, second is on treatment and removal, and the third is on regulation. So so the first challenges, so these are not limited to the water industry, nor limited to either wastewater or supply. They can sort of challenges in both areas. But currently there's, well, at least to my knowledge, there's no reliable technology to provide real-time data for emerging contaminants. That's quite an issue for, particularly on the drinking water side, that, you know, you're supplying water to the public. It's sort of a public health issue, I suppose. That when we sample for these, it's not a real time. It's you send it to the labs and it comes back days or weeks later. Also, the limits of detection and environmental quality standards are very, very low for these chemicals. So PFOS, which is a PFAS chemical, and cypermethrin, I've just put here the river annual average EQS, so environmental quality standards in micrograms per litre. So for PFOS, it's 0.00065 micrograms per litre. And for cypermethrin, which is the insecticide, it's even lower at 0.00008 micrograms per litre. So trying to analyse this in either our discharges or in the inlet of works, which is a very dirty matrix, it's very challenging to meet these very low limits, which is, yeah, challenging. And also the risk of contamination is quite high in some sampling activities. So for example, PFAS and microplastics, they're found, they're everywhere, and they're found in the majority of samples, so contamination is quite high. Also challenges in treatment and removal. So end of pipe treatment is quite difficult. We've identified that through SIP. There's not one process that's effective for all substances, and those that have been identified as potentially effective, so for example, activated carbon, is that a sustainable long-term solution if it had to be upscaled to every single site? Probably not. And also have this issue of problem solved or problem moved. So where we sort of have inlet and emerging contaminants are removed through solids, those solids are then reapplied to land. Is that actually solving the problem, or is it just moving it somewhere else, which is challenging? Also, challenges of regulation. So it's very brief. So you have issues of legacy emissions. So where we have like a product ban or a chemical ban, you can still get inputs of these chemicals to sewer, either through like washing or other processes which can enter wastewater and then the environment. We also have issues of regrettable substitution, not specifically a water industry issue, but it's still an issue. So where we have alternative chemicals that are developed to replace others, often they can be just as bad or even worse than the original chemical. So for example, PFOA was replaced with Gen X chemical, and yeah, it's as bad if not worse. And also challenges of rapidly changing regulation. So as I mentioned, the drinking water limits for PFAS, the DWI have issued 5 information letters over the last 3 years, with the latest being August 24. So it's very challenging to sort of keep up to date with all these changing regulations, particularly when it often doesn't align with our financial forecasting. Oh yeah, this is just my summary. Yeah, so issues that are very complex. The SIP programme has provided comprehensive evidence base for chemicals in the environment. There's various challenges, and there's lots of competing pressures for investment for water companies. yeah, that's it. Sorry, I was a little bit over.
Thank you so much, Megan. Much appreciated. Also, I went camping this weekend, and obviously, like a good ex-brownie, I waterproofed my tent beforehand. And your talk has now got me a little bit concerned. Did I do the right thing? I'm not going to be working in this topic area. Is there something more that I should be doing when waterproofing my camping bits? I don't know. Thank you very much again. Next up, just while she's putting her slides into presenter mode, we've got Dr. Adriana Kiss, Senior Water Policy Advisor with the Welsh Government. So Adriana has extensive professional experience across academia, the UK Civil Service and the European Commission. She joined the Welsh Government in 2009, where she's undertaken various policy roles in agriculture and the environment. And since 2020, she has focused on water policy within the Welsh Government, primarily addressing environmental and drinking water quality. But the reason why I'm super excited that she's come to join us today to give our regulatory perspective on emerging contaminants is she strongly believes that collaborative efforts towards a shared goal are the most effective way to achieve lasting results and safeguard water quality. So that's why I'm so excited to have Adriana here today, because that's what we're trying to do, and that's why we've got such a mixture of people in the room today, both sort of regulators, the supply chain, academia, water utility professionals, the supply chain. That's we've got all that mixture of people in the room today, because solving challenges like this can't be possible without that mixture of people. So I'll hand over the floor to Adriana.
Hi everybody, Adriana. Natalie, just confirm, am I sharing in presenter's mode?
Yep, it's all perfect.
Okay, and please give me verbal warning because I don't think I can see the chat while I'm presenting.
No problem, I can do that for you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm Adriana Kish. I work in the Welsh Government in the water policy team. I've been in water policy since 2020, and it is an extremely interesting but also very challenging work area. And I cover quite a lot of different things in water policy, and emerging threats is one of those areas that I'm really interested in and I want to progress. And that also includes antimicrobial resistance, and some of the previous speakers have already alluded to kind of as part of this emerging threats to water package. I'm just going to give you a very quick overview of the regulatory context in relation to Wales, and I want to warn everybody that my perspective is going to be from the Welsh Government. Although we do share quite a lot of similar concerns across the UK, and we do share some legislation between England and Wales, we have very specific policy approaches in Wales. So that's what my presentation is going to cover very briefly before talking about our approach to managing emerging threats to water quality. So one of the probably quite unique pieces of legislation that we have in Wales is the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which was introduced in 2015. And that was put in place to ensure that anything that we do as a government or other public bodies is aligned to 7 wellbeing goals, and ensuring that we are not depleting our natural resources, and any policy and any legislation that we develop is contributing to ensuring that our natural resources are maintained for future generations. And of course, healthy water environment, seems and a safe, clean water and sufficient supply of water would underpin all the well-being goals which relate to having healthier Wales, resilient Wales, prosperous Wales, and so on. Our policy is also aligned to a programme for government. This was designed when the new Senedd, which is the Welsh Parliament, came into place, the current Welsh Parliament, and this also makes a commitment to embed all our responses to climate and nature emergency in everything we do, and that includes legislation and policy development. We also following 5 ways of working, which relates to we need to do everything that prevents harm for the future. We need to make sure that we apply a holistic approach when we are making policy, that we engage early with the public and relevant stakeholders, that we collaborate widely across different sectors and across the UK, and also anything that we do is is designed to have long-term positive implications and doesn't have unintended consequences. So in some ways, the emerging threats to water work stream really fits under this 5 ways of working. Just very quickly, an overview of the legislative landscape. This is a very simplified version because, of course, the legislative landscape and the framework is quite complicated. But the key points are that water quality, water resources, and water industry are devolved areas, which means they fall under the competence of the Senate. But the reality is that it's a little bit more complicated because there are lots of areas where the Secretary of State and the Welsh ministers share responsibility, so they have joint responsibility, and that reflects the fact that, you know, we share our waterways with England. And for example, when we come to the implementation of the Water Framework Directive requirements, we have 3 river basins in Wales. And that's how the Water Framework Directive is implemented through river basin management plans. So we have 3 of them in Wales, but 2 of them are cross-border with England. So that's why we always collaborate and cooperate with England, specifically, obviously, DEFRA and the Environment Agency. The main primary legislations are the Water Industry Act and the Water Resources Act, and we have a range of secondary legislation that governs water quality, including drinking water quality, environmental water quality, and also bathing water standards. And most of those are classed as retained EU law, so it means that they were based on European directives and they've been preserved following the UK's departure from the EU. We already had quite a lot of these themes mentioned by the previous speakers, and Jenny gave us quite a good introduction into what an emerging threat is. I also found what Jenny has already said. So emerging threats are basically substances that are not yet regulated, but they present some kind of environmental or human health risk and concern. And our waterways obviously are, as we know, are quite polluted, and lots of things that we do are the things which pollute our waterways, and they can impact on both drinking water quality and environmental water quality. And there are a range of different substances, as it's already been mentioned. So there are different pharmaceuticals, personal care products, PFAS. We've heard quite a lot about PFAS already, plastics and microplastics, pesticides, and so on. And the problem is that all our human activity has a great impact, and everything, all these substances somehow end up in water. And the fact is that if you look for something in water, you probably will find it. But it's important that we look at these emerging threats and ensure that we consider all the risks, and we have evidence that support any policy and legislation development, and to ensure that these are not going to cause any further problems down the line in the future. We obviously have a number of examples that, you know, happened in the past with legacy contaminants, and that's why prevention and early intervention is quite necessary. PFAS is quite an interesting subject because it's gained a lot of attention through the media, and you know, people, I suppose, are rightly concerned about the impact of PFAS because it's so widely used, and it's classed as forever chemical because it's so persistent in the environment. So even though we have known quite a while that PFAS could be harmful to human health, the toxicology data is still lacking. And that's why PFAS is not actually regulated, apart from 2 substances, the PFOS and PFOA, which are classed as persistent organic pollutants under the Stockholm Convention. And even though we haven't got a regulatory standard for PFAS in drinking water, the Drinking Water Inspectorate has placed the duty on water companies to risk assess and monitor for a number of PFAS substances. I think it's about 47 or 48. I can't remember. But when we talk about PFAS, we are basically talking about a massive cluster of different varied substances, thousands and thousands of them. I'm just going to move and quickly mention what we've been doing in relation to emerging threats. I manage a working group, which is called Emerging Threats to Water Quality, very aptly. And this initially started as an informal gathering and discussions between Natural Resources Wales and Welsh Government policy. And very much based on Natural Resources Wales's chemical investigation programme, which is basically a series of passive monitors that are placed around in Wales's waterways. And it's not target monitoring, it's just looking at what can we find in our waterways. And it provides a very good dissection of our society, because what the passive monitors are picking up are exactly the things that we are using, whether they are personal care products or pharmaceuticals or veterinary medicines such as pet-friendly treatments. Because there has been such an interest and a very, very positive response to the initial discussions, this working group has now become a formal working group. We've got a terms of reference, and our membership has widened considerably, and that includes now the academia, the water companies operating in Wales, other regulators such as the Drinking Water Inspectorate, NHS Wales, and also some environmental NGOs. We do have regular monthly, bi-monthly online meetings, and this working group is essentially serves as an information exchange hub, but it also helps the Welsh Government to further this policy area by identifying what are the main concerns for Wales that we need to focus on, and also informs our further research needs. This supports our PhD placement program, for example, because we have a series of PhD students who join the Welsh Government on a 3-monthly basis, and they can do additional research, literature review and evidence gathering that we in the water policy team don't have time to do. So that's been really excellent. For example, the students helped us to get a much better understanding and analysis of NRW's extensive data, which were provided through the passive monitors. And
just
the main...
letting you know it's wrap-up time, if that is possible, sorry.
Oh, okay. Didn't have a 2-minute warning, sorry. So we may meet face-to-face, but we do have one face-to-face meeting scheduled for the 5th of November. So this is just a summary of some of the key findings, but I already mentioned some of those. I think I want to maybe mention very specifically a concern for Wales, that is diazinon, which is sheep dip, and that's something that is obviously related to our agricultural sector, and is something that is quite unique to Wales. And very quickly, talking about next steps, we continue collaboration across the UK with a range of stakeholders and the devolved administrations. And you might be aware that the UK government is also planning for a wide water industry reform. And today is the day when the first water bill is going to be laid. That's introduced by the new government, and that's the Special Measures Bill. And there will be an announcement tomorrow about further plans for reviewing the water sector. So all the legislative framework may be changing in the next few years. We also do continued research and evidence gathering, for example, do the PhD placement program, and also support research. For example, we provided funding to Bangor University to give us a better understanding of how AMR is transferred through the water environment. We also consider the revised drinking water standards in light of WHO recommendations and the EU changes, which is the the Recast Drinking Water Directive, and we work very closely with the DWI in relation to that. And we also started the review of the implementation of the Water Framework Directive in Wales, because the WFD target date for reaching good ecological status of all waterways is 2027. So we need to think about ways forward beyond 2027. So I guess that's it very quickly. And I'll stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Adriana. I think one chemical that I'm particularly interested in is that sheep dip. And I think it's really important to bear in mind that, yes, we talk a lot about the chemicals like PFAS, but actually there are a lot of emerging contaminants out there that don't necessarily get all of that attention or haven't yet received that attention. So I think they're really important to also bear in mind, as well as those big ones that we've been speaking about. And for instance, dark waters sort of covered that a lot as well. So thank you very much for your presentation, for raising some of those issues with the regulatory perspective to emerging contaminants in Wales. I would now like to invite all of our speakers from this morning's session, so that's Jenny, Megan and Adriana, to turn their camera back on, as well as Thomas. And I'd like to hand over to Thomas, who's going to be taking on the Q&A.
Hey folks, and thanks Natalie. Yeah, amazing presentations from all three of you. So really grateful. As Ellis has said, please post any questions in the chat and name any specific speakers that you would like to answer them. But I think I have one or two to kick us off. Actually, starting off with referencing dark waters, as Natalie just mentioned. So Jenny specifically, you mentioned dark waters in your talk. Since that film has been released, obviously emerging contaminants has got a little bit more attention, has kind of blown up a little bit. Do we think that is sort of based off the film, or is there actual more funding or more research or anything that's actually kind of warranted the increased attention, or is it just kind of a media frenzy, if you will?
I think we are perhaps more aware of what human impacts on the environment is as well. So while it was a bit of a kick and really highlighted it and brought it to many more people's attention than perhaps DuPont would have liked, I think we now know more about it. So it's perhaps moving from one of those emerging contaminants to something that has definitely emerged. It's definitely out there, but we're starting to consider more the risk to the human health and to the environment. We're doing much more monitoring, so we're finding it more, and I think that's quite often what happens. And as a few of us have said, you look for things, you'll find them. So until you start looking for it, you're not going to find it. But once you do find it, and you find it everywhere in potentially concerning concentrations, then it's that sort of kick into action. So bit of both, bit of science, bit of media. But yeah, any presence or absence of chemicals is always interesting.
Perfect, thank you. I've got one question in the chat here from Michael. How do we balance the ownership of the emerging contaminants problem between governments, regulators, society, and water companies? Maybe I'll start, Adriana, with you from your perspective on that one.
Well, like everything else, I think we need to be more collaborative and more integrated in our approach to address these problems, and you need to assess. Obviously, every emerging threat is a slightly different context. So the question is, what is the best way to manage it? Because legislation is not always the answer, and also developing legislative standards will take time, and regulations will take years before it comes into force. I can give you one example. For example, somebody already mentioned the veterinary medicines and the pet flea treatments, which is now getting more momentum, and we have some evidence that these chemicals present a great risk to especially aquatic life. But the question is, how do we regulate it? Because lots of it is linked to customer behavior. So people believe that they have to use these treatments on their pets, and then those treatments, the treatments gets into the water. So the most effective approach would be better awareness raising and working through, you know, working with companies and working with veterinary practices to ensuring that few of these medicines are used and only used when they are needed, and ensuring that people know that if they use those treatments, they don't let their dogs into the water for 48 hours. So we could be setting legislative standards, but actually it might be more effective to work on communication with the public.
Makes sense. Thank you. And Megan, do you have a view on that question from the water company point of view?
Yeah, I sort of emulate what Adriana said. Yeah, I think a lot of the, and particularly what Natalie said as well when she said that she was you know, waterproofing her coats and stuff like that. I think a lot of it comes from the general public aren't always aware that the normal activities that they do within the home can contribute to emerging contaminants in the environment, and similar with like pharmaceuticals. A lot of people don't realize that you know, the correct disposal routes are to return them back to pharmacies, not put them in the bin or pour them down the sink. So I think it's that sort of customer education programs, and also I don't think often a lot of public don't even realize what the water companies do and that effluent is returned to the environment. It's that sort of holistic thinking, and that, you know, once you flush the toilet, it's, you know, out of sight, out of mind, there's no concern to me, but actually it is. So I think those sort of like customer, general public sort of education campaigns are really important. But also I think in the sort of more industry side, there needs to be incentives for companies to make changes to chemicals in their products or anything like that, because, you know, until there's a regulatory driver for it, you know, they're always going to pick the cheapest or the most convenient, and often I guess they're the most damaging chemicals available in their processes. So I think there needs to be changes on both sides. I think for us, often obviously removing at source or treating at source is often more cheaper than sort of end of pipe solutions. They're generally a bit more environmentally friendly as well. So I think we'd push for those sorts of things.
Okay, amazing, thank you. So just for a time check, we're just gonna have one final question here, and then we'll move on to the next session. So we have one from Mike in the chat that's saying the PFOS limit in California is based on health grounds is 4 parts PBT or 10 PBT total with PFAS / PFOS. Is this level likely to be adopted in the UK? What do we think? Jenny, do you have a view on that?
I don't know. At the moment, the DWI have taken sort of a precautionary approach and introduced those tiers. I think if the WHO come out with a standard, the UK will be very quick to adopt it. I think anyone would be foolish not to. You know, if there is a perceived risk and there's then deemed a safe level or a level of least risk, perhaps, the UK should follow that. But obviously, I'm not a regulatory person, but my best guess would be that we would follow it if a limit was set on a global level.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Adriana, do you have any views on that from a regulatory point of view, or anything to add?
Yeah, sorry, my cat's just arrived. Yeah, well, we are considering obviously the EU standard that was introduced in 2020 and following after we left the EU, so we didn't have to adopt the new standard, but the DWI is looking at that, and we are considering. If we, as Jenny said, if we do have the data, if we have the toxicology evidence that underpins having, you know, more stringent standards, and of course, then we'll have to consider putting it in legislation. Just generally, it's currently the water companies in Wales are monitoring for PFAS, and they haven't identified any high risk areas. And we generally think that PFAS obviously is present in waterways in Wales, but it's potentially not in such high levels as in some areas in other parts of the world or even in England. It's mostly because obviously Wales is more rural and less industrial, so maybe that's one of the reasons.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. And just want to reiterate again, thank you to all the speakers so far this morning. It's been really interesting and, you know, thorough introduction to the emerging contaminants topic. I'm going to pass back over to Natalie now, but yeah, just want to say thanks to all the speakers. See you shortly.
Thank you again so much to Thomas and the speakers there, and our emerging cat not of concern for that appearance too. And thank you so much for putting your questions in the chat. Apologies for the technical difficulties that we had in the beginning, and thanks to those who emailed me letting me know that the chat wasn't working. Were there like, please post in the chat, and then you're not able to. I'm sorry about that mistake. I'm sure it'll be fixed for the afternoon as well. So next up, I would like to welcome Mark to the stage, who's going to be sharing his slides. So this Spring Accelerator, this call for innovation wouldn't be possible without a sponsor. And our sponsor for Spring Accelerator number 4 on emerging contaminants is RSE. RSE is a trusted clean water technology company developing market-leading products and solutions for purifying drinking water, recycling wastewater, and if that's not enough, cleaning water in industrial processes. Their solutions have received national awards and accolades for their innovation, their efficiency and cost, and their scheduling, while achieving enhanced quality and sustainability benefits for our projects. I'm really excited for Mark's presentation today because he's actually going to be delivering us some out-of-sector inspiration, so emerging contaminants with a little bit of a different angle to them. So really excited for that. I'm just going to do a quick intro to Mark. Give me a sec while I scroll up on my slide. So Mark Livingston is Technical Sales Director at RSE. He has 13 years of international experience across the industrial water, municipal water, and the environmental sectors. And throughout his career, Mark has developed specialist expertise in managing safe and efficient capital projects in all sorts of exciting places like the UK, the Middle East, and Australia. I do wish I was in Australia today because it is a little bit miserable here in Nottingham. Thanks so much, Mark, and over to you for your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Natalie and Thomas, and to the wider Spring team for the opportunity to be able to sponsor this accelerator. I'm really looking forward to tackling such an important topic around the emerging contaminants in our water. So thank you for the wonderful introduction. So if I go into the next slide, you'll see Natalie's probably covered off some of the key topics that I was going to say about what RSE is, focusing, but one topic we really want to focus on is RSE as a business model brings new technology to life quicker through standard integrated product solutions. So I want to take this opportunity to look at the opportunity where we've taken a different perspective from outer sector solutions and delivering technologies that we have developed from those sectors and brought them into the water sector. So one of those ones was from the oil and gas sector, where quite often, driven by program and cost efficiencies, they look at offsite modular construction. So back in 2012, we took the concept of modular solutions, where the industry and the UK water sector was primarily focused on ISO shipping containers as a modular solution, which was quite restrictive when it came to fitting equipment in there, the size of the equipment, and access and maintenance for the operator staff. So we took that concept and developed our own transportable treatment unit starting back in 2013, which was a single transportable unit housing process equipment for water treatment, primarily around nanofiltration for some more rural locations and more difficult sites to get to, both for labour and material. So being able to take that off-site and manufacture that in a factory condition, driving safety, quality, cost efficiency was a real driver around developing that further. Scottish Water, one of our main clients, was a big supporter of developing that further, and we went from a single transportable treatment unit, start developing that in 2016, to the dual transportable treatment unit, which has allowed us to give us a little bit more space and fit bigger process equipment into a modular solution. We also took the concept of some of these remote locations not having a highly skilled civil contractor to be able to support the delivery of the site work. So we took what was traditionally a civil-based scope around chlorine contact pipes, chemical waste tanks and the like, and put it in a sub-base within the modular solution. So we're able to then deliver them pretty much to a flat slab on site and drop the modular solutions on site and commission them quite quickly. It really drove cost and program efficiencies by doing that, because it allowed the civil program and the water treatment works fabrication to run in parallel, significantly halving the capital program, so saving around 20 to 30% efficiency on the capital cost and really driving carbon out of the manufacture. That evolved further in 2018 to multiple units, and then in 2019 we delivered the first two-story modular unit to one of the remote islands within Scotland. The benefit of around modular solutions also was around the penetrations in a civil slab, because you're bringing the services into the existing building. There was very few penetrations through the slab. Traditionally, you were in excess of 300 penetrations into a civil base slab, when you're taking that down to about a dozen penetrations. So we evolved that further into expanding into the wider UK market. Then we drove around and looked at sort of different technologies around filtration, and we've built the first modular ceramic membrane plant delivered in the world, and that happened for Bonnie Craig Water Treatment Works in 2021. That then evolved into the biggest ceramic membrane plant at the time being built down at South Staffordshire Water at Hampton Road in 2022. Due to the size of some of the units, a lot of the equipment was offsite built through sub-assemblies, with a traditional portal frame building being delivered on that site. But we wanted to take that concept further. So in 2024, now we're looking at a modular solution. And I'll go into a little bit more detail in the next slide for that. So traditionally, if you're looking at a water treatment plant, this is particularly a ceramic microfiltration membrane plant with inline coagulation and absorption upstream. For that would what a generally GA drawing would look like. So if you look at that and take the concept of a Lego block concept, you can break it down into the process equipment sub-blocks as part of that. So we've developed a modular CTU treatment plant that has the membrane vessel, the coagulation absorption vessel, and the backwash vessel all included into a module, including the pump system, the point of application dosing system, and the control panel, all within a single unit. If you look at that as a potential Lego block, you can just then do multiples of that into a treatment plant with the wraparound chemical dosing sub-assembly modules around hypochlorite dosing, pH adjustment, and then bringing in any of the neutralization, cleaning place, raw water, permeate, backwash modules. You start to get the concept of a modular water treatment plant that's all been manufactured and built off-site with standard designs. The real benefit around standard designs is you can do multiple of it, and you're saving 20% upfront cost on the capital cost, but around anywhere between 3 and 6 months on the design program to be able to bring that standardized product solution. So the only variable then you're looking at is really the pipework spine manifold that runs down the center of the plant, depending on the capacity of the water treatment plant you want to build. So that then really drives the efficiencies around capital and program. But obviously, the bigger the water treatment plant gets, the more sizable these modules become. So we're then working with out of sector technology supplier who's actually working in the mineral sector. We started looking at what are the barriers, what are the hindrances regarding the filtration process within water treatment and other sectors. They were primarily focused on lithium extraction market from a brine water source, but they've looked and investigated the existing membrane technology out there, and there was serious shortcomings in that technology. So it was suboptimal architecture. There was very high energy consumption costs. There's a high risk of fouling and scaling on the existing membranes, the downtime for maintenance, chemicals used for cleaning, and quite a short lifespan. So working with this technology supplier develops the lithium mineral extraction, but also has multi-purpose use, and hence why I'm looking to present this today to say, let's look outside the broader spectrum of technology that's actually in the water sector, but maybe people are doing water treatment outside of the water sector for different industries. So what we looked at is, what if we could take the concept of even a ceramic membrane, which is relatively new to the market, and look at the material science behind that and look at 3D printing to change the game. So undertaking precision engineering with CFD modeling using AI machine learning, we're able to look at how we can develop the flow stream through a ceramic membrane but also look at how we can ensure that we've got no dead ends in the ceramic membrane, which obviously significantly impacts on the capacity of a membrane, the flux of the membrane running through it, and what is the optimum design and the flow path for a ceramic membrane design if you could come up with the perfect 3D model for a 3D printed ceramic membrane. So you get an order of magnitude of performance gains. There's a non-invasive curing process, which avoids material stresses. There's a very low manufacturing cost, limitless design versatility, extremely large volumes of lot size ones. That's basically the pore size for the initial filtration barrier on the surface of the membrane. And there's local efficient manufacturing within the UK. So the membrane science that works, it's not just about the engineering. So we've gone through the engineering process and now started producing prototypes for the ceramic membrane and actually testing that against various contaminants and elements that you're looking to filter out. And because you can select the pore size based on the modeling, for the lithium extraction market, you can select that you want to pick the minerals and specify the mineral pore size that you want to filter out, significantly driving down the cost for extraction for that mineral. But we proved the printing process works. The pore size variability is extremely low, less than 1%. So that's been checked and proved. And the oil and water separation tests show that we can filter the unfilterable with massive performance gains. So I just wanted to take that opportunity to say, look, let's look at alternative technology out there. Because if we can develop a membrane that can filter the unfilterable, what can it do in the emerging contaminant space? Because there's 80% less energy used, 5 times the produce yield compared to traditional membranes. 80% of the more of the water is recycled using this ceramic 3D printed membrane, and 2 times the extraction of the resources. So all I would ask everybody here that's involved in bringing innovations to this accelerator would be open mind to where the innovation comes from to help us to combat all these emerging contaminants. And I'm really excited to see what we can collectively achieve together, both within the water sector and out of the water sector, to be able to deal with that and innovate and bring new technology which is capital cost efficient and can tackle the current identified emerging contaminants, but also potentially future emerging contaminants that we're not aware of at the moment. Give you my contact details there. If you want to get in contact, know more about the technology or the process that RSC is being involved in. But thank you very much for the time, the opportunity to present to you today. And I'll hand it back over to Natalie and Thomas. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mark. And it was just really interesting, I think, to hear what other sectors are doing and that other sectors are having similar challenges and are working towards them. Maybe even they're a little bit ahead of what we're doing in water. I'm not sure. It definitely sounds like some very interesting work is going on in that space. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Thanks,
I would now like to welcome Thomas to turn his video on, as well as Mark to do the Q&A.
So we got one question in the chat, Mark, to kick us off, which is what capex reduction do you achieve roughly using modular off-site construction compared to bespoke? Likewise, what's the reductions in commissioning or time costs?
So doing a single modular construction design, you're looking around about 10-20% efficiency. But if you can start looking at repeatable products and start looking at, rather than a construction program to a production program, you can achieve a further sort of 10% efficiency. So you're looking around about a 30% capital efficiency when you start having repeatable designs and repeatable products. And trying to get the industry to agree that standard, obviously, WIMES was developed within the UK water standard a number of years ago, and the water companies have gone out and developed and added to their bespoke asset standards and specifications as part of that. What we're trying to do is bring them all back in a line together so there's no bespoke preferential engineering around products. And what that enables then the industry to do is actually start manufacturing these products on a call-off basis, again driving further efficiencies in the delivery program, but also efficiencies around the production capacity within the supply chain.
Amazing, thank you. Just a reminder, pop questions in the chat. So Elizabeth, if you write your question into a little chat there, we'll get it to Mark. So the next question is from Michael. So what strategies does RSE see to be useful and feasible to deal with the concentrated stream?
So I think it's looking at the technology that's out there at the moment, but also challenging what you can actually do around the concentrated streams, and actually even recovery of some of the streams in a secondary process as well. So again, that's something we're exploring at the moment. It's a little bit easier out with the water sector when you've got a commercial sector where there's a commercial value on focusing a bit more capital expenditure regarding the revenue streams you might get, say, in the lithium market, being able to recover some more of the mineral as part of that. But I think what we need to look at is if that technology is being developed elsewhere, and then we can start commercializing it in other sectors and other industries, that'll drive the cost down. But then within RSE, we're also constantly looking to reinvest. Reinvest sort of 10% of our profits annually back into innovation product development as part of that. So even though it's quite innovative and new, not resting on your laurels about what you can actually do with water and what you can recover and what you can treat, and constantly pushing the boundaries of the art of the possible. And I know you've touched on that later today in one of your sessions, but it really should be the theme of this accelerator around emerging contaminants. What is the art of the possible about what we can achieve?
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks so much, Mark. And one from Elizabetta here, which is, did you consider the impact of the modular solution on the operational and maintenance cost of the plant once in service?
So yes, 100%. Actually, one of the benefits around offsite modular build is we're able to bring the operator staff to the offsite facility when we're actually manufacturing it, and depending on the size of the plant, most of the modular solutions we've developed, we can actually test and dry and even wet commission the modular solutions offsite. So we're able to bring the operators, the people that are going to be running and inheriting the plant, to our facility and train them up on how the plant's going to be operated. But they also feed into the process from the design concept all the way through. So that's been signed off. So the modular solutions I've presented there regarding the modular CTU and the modular chem units have actually been through client design review, client HAZOP review, operator input into what they would like to see going forward. And that's been addressed before we actually committed to submitting a patent. So we've got a patent pending for the modular CTU unit at the moment. So we knew that when that was actually adopted and rolled out to the water sector, that it'd be accepted by all the key stakeholders.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay, we've got a 2-minute warning and I have 2 questions. So we're going to rattle through these last 2 questions quickly before I kind of wrap up the session. So one from Michael: do we think there's an upper value for daily flow throughput beyond which modular becomes either not economic or not feasible?
I think that's where it comes down to the size of the process equipment, and depends on what your class as modular as well, because obviously you can go the full modular solutions, which I've sort of presented there. Although the Hampton Load example I showed, that it was sub-assembly, so 90% of the water treatment plant was still manufactured off-site, with the residual 10% manufactured on site because of the size of the plant. But when we're challenging the boundaries around the technology and around, the biggest utilization of space within that water treatment plant was the membrane filtration vessels and the backwash required as part of that. So we can drive efficiencies around, say the 3D printed ceramic membrane, where you've got no dead ends, improved flux. You're going to have a smaller footprint required for the filtration process in a water treatment plant. So therefore a smaller footprint for the water treatment plant. So you can either increase the capacity within the plant, or have a smaller footprint for what you're looking to achieve, depending on the flow through the plant. So I don't think there is any upper limit at the moment around modular solutions. I think the biggest restriction normally is access to site and getting the actual modular units to site. It tends to be the last sort of 1 kilometre to get it off the public highways into the local site is the main barrier for our modular solutions we've seen to date. And we've not failed to get a modular solution to a site yet. We can always achieve that.
Amazing. And one final question: what barriers do you see where there's the potential to produce value products, opening up a new revenue stream for the water sector?
I think we've touched on it in some of the presentations this morning, is around the capital cost to treat and filter out these emerging contaminants and where that funding's coming from, who's responsible for the outcome, and being able to invest in that. And I think that's probably what I see is the biggest blocker at the moment. The UK is somewhat behind the US in European regarding the legislation on that, and I think we need to accelerate that. But with the draft determination that's just recently come out, I can't see that funding happening over the next 5 years. But I think we can do a lot of the groundwork and learn some lessons from out with the UK to be able to make sure that, you know, when we're investing in new technology, we're investing in the right technology in the right locations to have the biggest value impact on our water. And then again, keep our minds open about innovative new technology that's coming. And just because we decide on something's the relevant technology today doesn't mean it's going to be in 5 years' time.
Absolutely. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate your talk and answering all those questions. Really great. And for the rest of the speakers as well, a really great morning session for us to kind of give a really interesting overview of the emerging contaminant space, the regulation, water company perspective. If you can, please join us for the afternoon session. We're going to go a little bit deeper, learn some lessons from our friends in the US and across Europe before going, as I said earlier, our final panel session of the day, which will really start to refine and push some boundaries on what our challenge should be. We've just posted a link in the chat to the afternoon session. I'm really looking forward to seeing you all there. In the meantime, if you want to email myself or Natalie, we've posted those in the chat as well. Perfect. I just want to say a big round of applause and big thank you to everyone again. This is a great kickoff to our fourth accelerator program. So see you all this afternoon. Thank you all so much.